In this interview, I talked to Shawna Newman from skipblast.com. We talk about using an aged or expired domain to essentially get traffic faster and skip the sandbox. We get into the nuts and bolts of exactly what you need to look for. I chatted with Shawna after the interview to find out where she was sourcing the domains, and she let me know that she gets her domains from ODYS, and we'll put a link in the description here so you can check it out. I'm an affiliate, so I get a commission if you do end up purchasing anything there, but it's worth it to go check out if you're in the market for aged domains. There's a few pitfalls you do need to look out for if you're using an expired domain, or an aged domain might be a more appropriate term to use. So we get into all those details. Shawna's been able to essentially test this with about 20 different domains, and she's arrived at a repeatable formula that she's able to use again and again. And the fact is, it's kind of risky to buy these domains if you don't know what you're doing. So if this is the first time that you're hearing about this sort of thing, hopefully your mind is going to be blown. Shawna's super smart, and it's a very cool and smart way to really just skip the sandbox or shorten that period of time before you start getting traffic. So without further ado, let's get to the interview with Shawna Newman. Hey Shawna, how's it going today?
Good. How about you?
Doing pretty well. And of course, today our topic is expired domains or aged domains and using them to grow your site in a faster way. And you actually inspired me to acquire a site not too long ago because we had this conversation, and I think I mostly pieced together the process, but I want to make sure I generally have it right and I can fix anything that I screwed up on. Before we get into the details, can you just give a quick intro about who you are and what you do?
So I blog over at skipblast.com. I've been doing SEO and building sites for more than a decade, and I do a lot of testing, and I've been testing using expired and aged domains for about 2 years now, and I've lost a lot of money trying different things, but I finally found a winning formula. So
Very good. And I sometimes just like to skip right to the punchline and hear
okay.
about some results. So can you tell us the impressive results that you finally, figured out how to do this in more of
Okay.
a formulaic way? So as far as traffic and revenue and sort of the time frame, so we get an idea of what's possible here.
Sure. So I'm actually logging this as a case study on my blog. It's Project Tartarus. And I'm just entering the 5th month of the site. I just hit 100 live posts after 1 month of not working on the site at all because of my international move that was unexpected. And I'm on track for about $300 this month,
Okay. And what was the time frame again?
starting month 5.
Okay, month 5. And if you started a site from scratch, about where would you expect it to be in month 5?
Not at $300, that's for sure. Usually when I start sites, I try to get them up to 100 posts in the first 3 months and just let them sit, not expecting much. So it's definitely a big difference.
Okay. And just as a ballpark, and I know I just asked a similar question, but after about 1 year, on average, if you just had to give someone an answer about how much money and revenue would a person expect on a year-old site, given your normal trajectory?
I would say if you're working on it consistently, I think $1,000 is pretty reasonable for most
Okay,
niches, that is.
great. So let's dig into the details here and kind of lay out the process for either an expired or aged domain. And maybe we just start there. What's the difference between an expired domain, an aged domain, and buying one from scratch?
So if you're buying one from scratch, there's no history there more than likely, unless you accidentally end up buying something that's been registered and dropped previously. With the expired and the aged domains, you do have history. And what I look for are quality backlinks that are already existing, because that's kind of a shortcut for me to not have to do any big link building in the beginning of a site's life.
Okay. And from there, where does one find these expired and aged domains? And is there much of a difference between the two? Like, does it matter if we're looking for a quote aged domain or expired, or is it kind of equivalent?
I think people use the two terms interchangeably. For me, I define expired as maybe it was dropped, but it still has a lot of great links, so someone has picked it back up. I see a lot of those domains at places like TB Solutions, but what I prefer are the age domains, which means that somebody caught it before it was dropped, and so it's never been dropped. There's probably still pages that are indexed in Google, and so it starts you out a little further than just an expired domain.
Is there much of a difference if, let's say, someone found a blog that was kind of inactive and it's sitting there and you bought that? So you bought a blog that was sitting there running. Is that pretty much the same? And you would maybe have to email the buyer or the
Yeah, that
owner.
would be pretty much the same as an age domain, but it would probably cost you more.
Okay, great. So there's a few marketplaces where you can get
Hmm.
either these age domains, or I guess we'll just call it that. So there's some
Yeah.
marketplaces you can get some age domains, and they're fairly easy to find. I don't have relationships with any of them, so we won't mention them here, but we'll talk afterwards to see if we could provide
Okay.
some links. But there's a few out there, right?
There are, like I said, some of them provide both expired and age, so you have to really know what you're getting when you're shopping for them.
Okay. Well, let's get into the details. And I imagine most of the time you have a niche in mind. So you kind of
Right.
shop around. So what's the process? How do you start finding these domains?
Well, for me, I had a niche that I knew I wanted to go into for about 3 months. So basically, I just monitored the marketplace that I wanted to use for 3 months, saw a few domains that came up that were met my criteria for the niche, but they didn't have enough backlinks for me, or they didn't have any pages still indexed in Google. I found one that I almost bought, but I passed on it because most of the links were UK sites, and I obviously wanted to rank in the US. And so I thought that would kind of slow down my process.
Okay. So you kind of you stock them, and then when you find the one
Yeah,
you want, you go for it.
right.
What kind of price ranges are there out there for these domains?
I've paid as little as $200. My biggest flop was $1,500. This site that I have right now that's working was just over 2,000.
Okay. And 2000, obviously pretty pricey, and someone
Yeah,
would need to be confident in what they're doing or have some
yeah.
budget to test. What what criteria were you looking for specifically for that site and that domain, and what made you like that domain so much?
The domain that I got, I wasn't 100% on because it was an acronym of a previous organization. And so I wanted something that had a keyword in it. So I almost didn't actually buy it. The reason that I bought it, though, was because it had several pages still indexed in Google. It had almost 200 live referring domains, and most of those were hyper niche relevant. So even though it didn't meet my criteria of having the keyword in it, I was able to make the acronym work for the niche that I wanted. So I went for it.
Perfect. So if someone's out there thinking, hey, I'm going to check the marketplaces, I'll keep an eye out for the specific niche. What are some of the big mistakes that people make when they snag either an expired or aged domain?
I think not enough backlinks is one thing. I know that some of my early mistakes were not having enough backlinks pointed at the domain, but also it doesn't matter if there's 300 links if none of them are niche relevant. So when I'm going through the marketplace, I actually open up the Ahrefs, pop in the domain, and then I write down by category, which niche is this link in, which niche is this link in, and then I go through that one by one. And then if it doesn't tip the scales to being mostly niche relevant, then I pass.
Okay, so you're just looking for the majority of the links or referring domains to be niche relevant. As long as it's
Right.
more than 50%, probably okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's based on all of the money I wasted on other domains trying this out.
And if they're not relevant, I take it then it doesn't really move the needle, and it doesn't
Right.
matter if those links are there. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. When I've had that happen with failure sites, then the best results I got was actually 301ing that entire domain and all the content I created to a different domain. And
Okay.
even then, the results aren't as good as I'm seeing right now on the domain that I have.
All right. For the sheer number of backlinks, is there a certain threshold where it makes a difference or it doesn't make a difference, or is it kind of a mixed bag?
My minimum is 150 live referring domains and hrefs. I don't know what the magic number is, but I've had as high as 100 on the domains that failed. So I don't know if there's any correlation there or not, but yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's hard to put a I don't know, put a number. I guess you could sort of just
Yeah.
pick a line in the sand and stick with it and test. So 150 is the cutoff, with half of those being relevant to the niche.
Right. And you also have to actually look in the Wayback Machine, and you can also sometimes find it on Ahrefs to make sure the domain hasn't been 301 in its history.
Right. And why is that an issue?
It just even though it had eventually stopped being 301, it just never seems to provide as much juice, at least in my experience, as if it had never been 301. Like I
Okay.
said, I've tested a lot of these. So,
How many age domains did you end up going through?
just over 20.
Okay. Do you know how
Yeah.
much you spent total on all of them?
I don't want to know. Yeah, I
You
haven't
didn't
had it
keep
this
that
far.
spreadsheet. Yeah, don't sum that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So that's quite a few. All right. So
yeah.
you have the domain, and do you build on top of it, or do you 301 it? Like, what do you do once you get it?
First, I look to see which pages are still indexed. In my experience, those tend to be the pages that still have a lot of links pointed at them. So then I want to definitely keep those URLs. I either rebuild something similar to what was there, or I just kind of make, I'm sure you've seen people talk about acquisition type pages where you say we just acquired, X company. So I kind of make it something like that. Then I also am going to look through Ahrefs and sort top pages by links. And I'm going to recreate URLs for every page that has a bunch of quality links at it.
Okay. And if a URL doesn't have a link going to it, what do you do with that one?
Nothing.
Okay. So no need to
And
recreate. Okay.
right. And like the domain that I bought had some PDF files that had a lot of links in its history. I obviously didn't want to create PDF files about nonsense. So I just 301 those to a category silo that I'm creating on the page that was relevant.
Okay. And that makes sense. I mean, if someone, let's say it's a company that got purchased, it would make sense that they would try to point
Right.
people in the right direction, even if the original content wasn't relevant and you're not going to have it anymore, to just get them in the right direction. So it makes sense from like a business standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
I
right.
think a lot of mistakes I make, and I tested those some of my failed domains, is 301ing all of the pages to just the root domain. Like that kind of looks suspicious, and that doesn't seem to work in my experience.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's what I heard about back in the day with the 301s. You would actually, I've done this a few times. It never worked, but I probably got terrible domains where I grabbed an expired domain, 301'd it to the home page or maybe a specific category. So you're doing it a more professional way, like something a real business would do. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the mindset you need to have.
all right. So you recreate the pages with the links. If a page
Mhm.
doesn't have a link, you don't worry about it. So anything else with like redirects or thinking about the technical aspect of acquiring the domain and then making sure you're getting all the benefits of the existing links.
I have discovered through Ahrefs after I got my site live pages that had several links that didn't originally show up in Ahrefs as having links. So I have had to go on and create a few pages that I didn't originally have created to kind of keep those links.
Why
So
do you think that was the case?
I'm not sure actually, but they've shown up, and it's been like 3 or 4 pages in the 5 months. And they had niche relevant sites that had a high enough DR that was worth my time to create something for those URLs.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I guess their bots don't necessarily hit everything for some reason if it's
Maybe.
hmm,
Yeah.
weird. What was the site getting any traffic at all?
Yes, yeah. When I started recreating the pages that were already indexed, traffic started coming immediately. Well, I was going to say, whenever I make new posts on the site, and it's been like this since the beginning, they get indexed almost immediately, and I have a ranking in the first 2 pages, depending on how hard the keyword is, within like 24 hours.
Okay.
So,
And I guess to sort of backtrack for the new content that you've added, how competitive are these keywords, maybe in terms of like the search volume or any sort of difficulty score you may use?
I'm actually making a 100% informational play with this site. So I'm doing a lot of how to type articles and question articles like that. So I'm targeting a lot of forums that are ranking for top keywords. So they're pretty low competition, but they're not low traffic. So my top post right now gets over like 2,600 a month is what it's listed as in Ahrefs.
Okay.
So it was super easy to rank number one for and grab the featured snippet, but it still gets a lot of traffic. So
Cool. That's pretty cool. So this is the site you're doing all informational content.
yes.
Are there products that you could feature in the future? Like, is it a niche that gives you that opportunity too?
Yeah, so like one of my top posts is kind of like a question post, but I have the opportunity to refer to a product in it. And so that's the only Amazon link I have on the site, but it makes sales every month.
Cool. Okay. And are you going to put more product related stuff or just keep it info only for the case study purpose?
Well, right now I have over 200 topics in my spreadsheet that are just informational, but every week I add new sites that I find as competition to my spreadsheet as well. So I will eventually get to adding more products, but I'm just kind of just going through that list for now.
Got it. Okay. Wow, that's pretty interesting. And yeah, there's so many keywords you'll eventually go for.
Yeah, yeah.
Back on track with the age domain stuff. So, any other details that are relevant to either content that you're adding, keywords you're going for, or technically setting up the site to capture all the link juice?
Well, I think you have to regularly be checking for new pages popping up, like I said in Ahrefs, that maybe you didn't realize had links pointed at them. The other thing is, based on all of my testing, it's super, super, super important that you keep it niche relevant. I know that there are some anomaly sites ranking in the SERPs right now that are just covering a wide variety of things, but based on the 20 plus sites that I've tried this on, you definitely have to keep it niche relevant with the history.
Okay. And I've heard of some people buying a specific expired domain in a or an age domain, it doesn't matter, in a specific niche that had a bunch of links and then 301ing that site into a silo on a broader site. Have you tried any of that sort of more surgical approach and how did it go?
I did try that. I actually have several sites where that's being implemented right now, but all of those expired domains started out as me testing them being standalone sites. So when I moved the content, it kind of more created its own silo on the existing sites. But I mean, it lifted the entire site. So,
Got it. And when you do that, you have the original site
mhm,
running
mhm,
and you still have a WordPress installation there, and then you 301 each one of the URLs to the new site where the
mhm.
content's going to live in that silo. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, and it's super tedious.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
I've done that a little bit, and yeah, it's a more surgical approach. It's literally
yeah,
every single URL you have to do.
yeah.
And is there any pitfalls with that you ran into, or generally it works pretty well for you?
It's worked every time I've tried it.
Okay, very good. Now we we want to cover actually, fuck, I'm gonna have to edit a little bit now. 18 minutes is where I messed up. Okay. And well, since I have to edit anyway, are there any other like things that I should ask you before I let you talk about maybe the upcoming course?
I don't think so. I think that covers most things with the expired domains.
Okay, cool. Okay, we covered a lot here, and there are some technical aspects, but people could generally follow along with the process and understand the 301s. And I know you don't have this course out yet, but you will be teaching. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going to be in this course for age domains and expired domains?
Yeah, it's basically going to be my experience of losing a lot of money and then finally getting it right on how to find these domains, do proper due diligence the first time, what to look for, what to avoid, things like that, so that you can kind of recreate what I'm doing basically.
Okay. Because I guess it's easy to pick the wrong kind of domain
Oh,
and
yeah.
drop $1,000 and it's worthless.
Yeah, I mean, some of those domains are as high as 7,000 that I've seen, so you could lose a lot of money really fast.
One of our, I think, mutual friends, I talked to him and I think it was like a $5,000 domain. I think it worked out, but
That's good.
I mean, they get pretty expensive out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So people can find you over at Skip Blast, and
Right,
I recommend they sign up for your email list so they'll be informed when that course
right.
comes out.
Yep, because I do pre-sales on all the courses, so.
Very good. That's smart. I like that. All right, Shawna, thanks for joining us and dropping the knowledge on expired domains. Thank you.
Cool, thanks.